Good morning. Today I wanted to do a little short video talking about the phrase vintage style, not vintage values. You'll see this a lot in the vintage community, but if you're not like really deep in the vintage community, if you're like new to vintage, or you're just a person who enjoys it without doing all the videos and joining into the communities, etc., you might have heard this phrase before or never heard it before and not really know what it means. And I thought that I should talk about it a little bit because of a conversation, a really great conversation that came up on my Geek Betty Vintage page recently about vintage values. And to explain the concept, I'm going to start first with a question that I get all of the time, which is people always say to me, I bet you think you were born in the wrong era, or I bet you wish you had been born in the 1950s, or don't you feel like you were born in the wrong era, something like that. I get that all the time. And the answer for me is always an emphatic no. I do not wish I was born in any other era than the one I'm in. I wish that the one I was in was more progressive than it is, and I wish that we weren't still battling some of the same issues that we're still battling. But for me, I would have not wanted to be born in the 1950s. As a very strong, outspoken, stubborn, opinionated woman, I would not have gotten along well with people in that time period. I struggle with it now. It's the 2000s and I'm still being told that I should be quieter, nicer, gentler, sweeter. All of these things that society wants women to be so that we'll be quiet, shut up, and do what they want us to do. And no, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want some husband who does everything and tells me how to dress, how to behave. I don't want to not be able to vote. I don't want to not be the person that I am. And so when you hear this phrase, vintage style, not vintage values, that's kind of what it's touching on a little bit. You can appreciate and enjoy vintage styles without supporting in any way the vintage values that are common for the time period of that style. So you can really love 1950s style. You can dress it, you can wear it, you can like embody it in your makeup and your hair and your clothing and utterly reject the values from that time period. And that's the beauty of being born in this era rather than being born in that era. Because while you could have rejected those values back then, there were harsh repercussions for doing so. And so I want to encourage anyone who feels intimidated by vintage clothing or vintage style because they think it's associated with those values to embrace the style and reject those values. The other thing that I want to talk about a little bit is that every time I make a post, like a Black Lives Matters post or a post calling out a racist on my Geek Betty page, I get a lot of messages from people saying things like, this is a business. Stick to what you know. I didn't come here, I didn't follow this page so that I would see these things. Well, unfollow me. I'm okay with that. I don't want racists on my page. I don't want racists buying items from me. I would rather not make a sale this week than make a sale to a racist person. Racists need to be ejected from our society completely. They need to be dissuaded from being as open about it as they are, and the only way that they're going to do that is to hear from other white people as well as black people that it's unacceptable, and it's utterly unacceptable in this day and age to be a racist. So do not make comments on my page things like, why does this have to be a race issue, when somebody brings up how they feel about the values of that era. I will delete that comment. I will ban you. No matter how much money you've spent at my shop, if you've spent money at my shop, I don't want that in my life. I don't want that in my business. So if you have made a comment like that and then you notice that you're no longer able to comment on my page, that's why. So this ended up being a little bit longer of a video than I meant for it to be. And I really just wanted to talk about the idea of supporting vintage style and vintage fashion and rejecting vintage values. And it kind of turned into a little bit of a frustrated rant on my part. I apologize for that. But I just want you all to know that I do 100% believe that you can look at photos of vintage style and appreciate their style and still reject their values. So even if it's like a person from that time period, I think you can still appreciate their style without accepting their values in any way. Unless it's, I don't know, Hitler. He didn't have good style anyways. That mustache was horrible. But I always try, when I do posts about vintage style, to never include problematic people. And so if there's ever a time when I have failed to exclude somebody who's problematic, or I have shared something that you find distasteful, not because you're a racist and you want me to stop calling you out, but because it's supporting racist ideology, please message me and let me know, and I will remedy that immediately, because it's more important to me that my page be a place that is welcoming for people than for me to be right about these things. So even if it's uncomfortable for me, please do let me know if I've made a mistake. So anyways, let's support vintage style. Let's reject vintage values. And thank you so much for sticking through this if you did. And thank you for supporting small businesses, and especially small businesses like mine. Thanks.